Alright, hi guys, UnoPro here. Today I'm pretty excited for what we're doing. Something a little bit different than normal. And basically what I've got for you guys today is, some of you may be aware that a couple of people from Blue Blight who helped develop the game and community managers, they decided to run an 8-man Swiss, first come, first served, give away a couple seals, just really get some community participation going on. And today I've got a game from the second round, and then we'll also go on to the final for that game. So really cool to see this kind of stuff happening in the community. Community managers really showing that they actually are trying to get involved with the community, offer different opportunities for tournaments. And I did hear Momi saying that she was playing on some more of these kind of tournaments. So definitely something to look out for in the future. I do encourage you guys to try and get involved in as many tournaments as you can, because really interesting. And I feel like a lot of the time you see a very diverse meta in a tournament, because you can really break down what kind of meta you're going to face. This one not so much, it's just a normal 8-man Swiss, but surprisingly it wasn't full of Inferno. It's actually a very even distribution across the classes. So we do have a couple games here, so let's get into it. We're starting off with Citroxa versus Eliatras, and we have Kenage, Master Strategist, versus Noboru, Call of Twilight. Two a little bit offbeat heroes, and we are actually playing open, so a format I kind of just stopped playing once standard came out. I really like the standard format, but it will be cool to go back, see some of the older cards in action. So let's get underway. This was the second round of the Swiss, and I believe both players did win their first round. So starting off with the mulligan decisions, a pretty decent curve here. Coral Priestess could be okay here, but with not really any stronger creatures on the board, it's probably not doing too much. And we can see the hand of our opponent here, looking like quite an interesting build. A bit of a mix between spells and high damage creatures. And I really kind of like these mid-range kind of builds that can run dark magic, because one of my favorite combinations is really just running the dark magic schools, because the thing is, if you get a couple creatures out early, and let's say your opponent is just on a creature deck, so if they're reliant on stopping their damage with creatures, then you can just continue. If you can continue to just remove their creatures and punch through damage, if you get on board first, that can just win you some games. Now obviously a lot of the time your opponent will be running removal, but I mean, I feel like dark magic is a very strong tool, but it also a lot of decision making with it as well. Is that worth Soul Reaver? Can I ignore it? Light magic a little bit weaker, especially in the current standard, though there are some good cards from the older sets, such as the Light of Tomorrow, working similar to some graveyard recursion strategies we have in the current standard. So not a lot of comment on here. Having a hard time getting through these Fountain Spirits for now, but he does have the option, and I'm assuming he's going to do it, is attack. And I mean, he can't be targeted actually, that's something to consider. So yeah, very awkward hand to deal versus these Fountain Spirits, which really giving Citroxa no options. So he probably just play the Shark Protector, or he may just choose to play the Kabuki Seductress as a 2-1-5, which he does choose to do. Probably recognizing that he is the more aggressive deck in this matchup. That's a really important thing, is just recognizing who's the beatdown. Very famous MTG article about telling who is the control deck in what matchups. And I would say in this, normally dark magic schools tend to be a little bit more defensive. And Kenage very creature based, so it wants to get on the board early, as it's harder for more creature based decks to get back onto the board. So yeah, so Citroxa having a hard time at the moment. He will have Raya on turn 5, and if there was no Soul Reaver waiting for it, then it could do a lot of work. It's a very powerful card, especially if left alone. So he continues to try and get some creatures on the board. Definitely a decent idea to try and make these power lanes, just to be able to push through these Fountain Spirits, because otherwise he has no way to interact with them. So yeah, assuming he's just going to attack here, and then hopefully he'll be able to clean this up in the next couple turns. Another option is to move them both up. But no, he's going to choose to Just attack there, keeping it simple. So yes, there are a couple answers for Riot at the moment. I'm not sure if Satroscom might decide to, hold off. Knows his opponent is probably handful of removal. Yeah, but he does really need to land a big threat at the moment. He's just really not getting anywhere. These Fountain Spirits, he's got a bunch of creatures that enter the board effects that just can't be used. So he will maybe be able to use the outmaneuver to finish off this, but this has already come into play. It's already killed off a creature, stopped an attack for a turn. It's already got plenty of value. So not looking like the best spot at the moment, though he's under no pressure, that considered. Blinding Light, a spell I've always found really interesting, Sometimes it's worse than Soul Reaver, if they still have persistent effects, but a lot of the time it can just be cleared to free up those lanes, and they can never block unless they want to kill off their own creatures. So, very interesting card. I really like it from a design kind of point of view. So he does go with Raya, and I'm guessing that's going to meet a Soul Reaver. Most likely. He could choose to use Shadow Image as well, and just lock down the Raya, which is also another option, and maybe the better option. So he possibly could have chosen to play it here, attack the shark, and then stop Raya from attacking. So then he's getting his own Raya and locking down the enemy Raya for just a bit. Does choose to keep it a bit simple. Not sure if that was the best idea necessarily, but I mean, there's definitely alternative lines of play here. So, nothing too out of control at the moment. But it is nice to see, just a couple of the old cards being played with. So yeah, here I think he probably should choose to draw a card, which he does do. And I feel like that's something, I know I say this a lot guys, but once you get to that later point in the game where all your requirements are met, the power of drawing one card a turn is just so good. And I understand card advantage isn't as important in Duel of Champions as it is in other games. But there's points where if you're drawing a card every turn, and your opponent, they're not planning out their turns, sometimes they draw a card at the end if they just happen to have an extra resource. But if you're planning out your own, thinking, maybe I can make a slightly less optimal play, but I can draw a card, it's going to give you so many more options, and at the end of the day, if you can go even, saving one resource a turn for drawing a card, then that can be absolutely huge at the end of the game. So Shinji Warrior looking down, coming to 2 for 1 really. And so far we haven't really seen any removal from the side of Kenich. So how does he deal with these big threats like the Sayama Champion and the Shinji Warrior without these removals? And he hasn't even really put any damage through. He will be getting another 3 damage, 14 life, very comfortable life total. Honor creatures aren't really doing a lot. Probably going to move one of these two just for damage, but I mean that's all he has at the moment. He does have those 2 power, so if you can get him low, he can finish up. But if he's just going for damage, he currently has no way to even open up the lanes for those powers. So he's just gonna have to power creatures eventually. So he really does need to look. I mean, it's tempting, you have so much damage, you need to go face, and I do agree with that maneuver there. But he really needs to find a way to actually gain a strong board, which he has started to do, but considering the hand of Noboru, really struggle with some of these names, guys. If anyone has a better idea how to pronounce this, I've been saying Noboru for a while now, but it's probably wrong. Anyway, so he really needs to get a strong board, and we haven't seen any way to protect his threats. There are these ongoing events that are very powerful in open still, where increasing the resource cost of spells can be so huge, and it is really important for protecting it. Here he's probably going to need to start deploying these. An interesting thing about the Shark Warrior is it actually doesn't have cannot attack. So it can be buffed by those Honor 2, and maybe it might have even been a decent decision there. But looks like he's probably going to play. Looks like he's probably going to play it to just kill off one of his Fountain Spirits, which is probably what I would do. And it looks to be a pretty standard play. So he has got a big threat on the board. These shadow images, they can be really powerful at times, but sometimes you'd just much rather have a Soul Reaver. I mean, obviously stealing a token of a thing is really good, but when all lanes are filled like this, it's very easy for a token to deal damage, and with no easy quick kills, it's really awkward for him right now. So we can definitely see Kenich is starting to gain some ground. Just kind of slowly developing her threats, playing well around the Shinji Warrior. So we will see the Puppet Master come down, and that is really, really hard for Kenich to deal with. He's not a Fortune deck. He's not going to have access to Broken Bridge. He's at 1 magic. There's not a lot that can get him back his card to his hand, and we haven't seen any way for him to deal with this. And with Honor 2, it is going to be incredibly hard for him to deal with. So from now on, I think he's kind of on the plan. I've got the 2 outmaneuvers, got the 2 powers, a couple Honor creatures. I'm going to have to push some damage, and I think that's what we'll see here. And using the abilities, making it cost 3 less, so it looks like we could have a bit of a power turn here from him. And that is a lot of damage. 8 damage to the face. So now any one of those powers, he still has the outmaneuver. So suddenly out of nowhere, the ability of Kenich, which I honestly just didn't even think to consider how powerful it could be to combo off like that. Novo is in a lot of trouble here. He needs to deal with these big Honor creatures, but he also needs to clog every lane pretty much because there's so much outmaneuver. So this does look like it's going pretty well for Kenich now. And suddenly we can see a bit of a weakness of the Dark and Light schools is really a lack of good AoE. I mean, there are a couple dealing 2 damage to all enemy creatures, that kind of stuff, but in the grand scheme of things, it's really not doing that much, even if it was in his hand. So Dark, and Dark especially, I have a lot of experience with Dark spell schools myself. Really, once you're behind on the board, it can be a lot harder because your spells may be really good and really strong, but they also cost a lot. You're only casting 3 dark spells in a turn for a long time, and that makes it a lot harder to catch up. So he does manage to fill all the lanes here, which is something, but it's just 1 life. It's going to be a close one, guys. So basically, Kenich also in the same position now. He's going to be really needing to likely kill him this turn, or not at all. So let's see the options here. Yes, managing to kill off both creatures, but he needs to figure out how to get the powers through. That is the question. If he had a double out maneuver, he'd be able to deal with it. Oh yes, of course, the Shinji Warrior ability, killing off his own creature. Actually working against him a bit there. So that will be a win. Honestly, I apologize. I'm not as experienced with Open anymore. Bit out of practice with it, but what seemingly looks like a very comfortable position for Nobu, just slowly deploying more creatures, and rather than having specific spell answers, which is kind of where the control deck wants to be, he kind of just let his opponent just wait around, slowly develop the forces, and then we saw the powerful tempo of Kenich's ability, and that, playing those huge honor creatures for just 3 or 4 mana, it's very 3 mana, I believe. Just very, very hard for a deck to deal with, especially a dark magic deck, where dark magic schools They're very a little bit anti-tempo is the best way to describe it. Sure, a lot of the time you're actually paying 4 mana to kill a 3 mana creature. And we saw that was the case there. And the Alone in the Darks, because he didn't have many other removal spells, he wasn't able to clear the way for the adjacent creatures. And a little bit of problem with Alone in the Dark in that kind of deck is that because you don't have a lot of good AoE, there's not a lot of punishing your opponent from really committing to the board. They know there's not a lot of good AoE, and that means Alone in the Dark, it just wasn't turned on very often. And very easy to play around when you don't have to also play around something like Akrath Wrath. So guys, that was the first game of today's video, and we will be going on to the final. Just a minute, just edit the video, and I'll see you guys in a second. Alright guys, UnoPro back again, here for the final, and we have a Kenich versus the Zorm. Now, those of you maybe not too familiar with Open, Zorm is a very aggressive champion, as we can see by the 2 starting, might, very aggressive ability, and just the 1 fire school, kind of in exchange for that really aggressive nature. And as we've seen, Kenich, not as aggressive, a little bit more mid-rangey, I would say. But honestly, it's going to be a lot about early board control, because as we saw, Kenich not really running any spells to gain back board control. Really reliant on having a good strong board for those outmaneuvers to work. So here we go. Pretty nice starting hand for the Kenich. Able to get on the board in turn 1, and we see the hand of the Zorm right here, with also the Dragon Crystal. It's going to be a lot. So some of you might not be aware, the Lava Spawn ability has changed if you're familiar with the old one, where previously you just couldn't use your hero power that turn. So Zorm does start with 2 might, so he does have the ability to use it instantly. But let's just say one of them died. Probably not a big thing in mind. No way he can play that Dark Assassin the next turn. So here, he chooses to play the Dark Assassin. Now, I still think this possibly might be a mistake. I understand the thought process. I definitely will get the Dark Assassin early, and the earlier you get it out, obviously the better it is. But there's not a lot Kenich can do to kill a Lava Spawn on turn 2, and getting multiples out first is probably what I prefer to do. But I mean, he does get 2 out this turn anyway. So as we could have seen, he would have got an extra 3 damage in had he played the 2 Lava Spawns previously. And I mean, it's such an aggressive deck that can really add up those small decisions. And people do say aggressive decks don't take a lot of skill sometimes, but as we can see, just from turn 1 he already had a lot of decisions really. So yeah, looking like he'll probably just continue with the 1-drops here. A very aggressive game so far. Kenich does have the tools, but I feel with a lack of just AoE removal like Insect Swarm, like if you can imagine Insect Swarm in this position, it's just going to absolutely punish his opponent. But his opponent realizes he's versing a Kenich, and so he can just freely extend into the board and just look to deal as much damage as early as possible. So already things aren't looking too good for the Kenich player. Though I mean, he does have a couple cards out. He could play the Saima June. Not doing a whole lot. Probably what he'll do is play one in the top lane, move one of these down here, just so the Shark Protector is dealing with 2 creatures, trade off, and obviously not in an amazing position, but he's starting to fight back the board control. And I think one of the mistakes, this is more directed at the newer players, is when they're versing an aggressive matchup, they think, well, it's in a really aggressive deck, I want to obviously stop my life total from going down. And while this is, sound logic, seems very logical, that way to do that is often just blocking creatures just to save life points, and the creature's just dying. But you're not getting anyone on the board, so your opponent's going to easily be able to put out more damage. And that's kind of a problem. So what you really want to be doing is you want to get the board control, and then once you get the board control, then they won't be able to do any more damage. But if you just really let them kill your creatures, you're not getting anywhere, and they're just going to put more and more damage out on the board. So I probably would have preferred to play the Ambusher there. In such an aggressive matchup, I feel like you really want to spend your mana as efficiently as you can, and it would have a similar result to what just happened. He does get the kill on the Dark Assassin, which is nice. Now the outmaneuver is not really going to be doing anything, though he wants to get those bigger creatures out. So he might just choose just to play the outmaneuver, just not even use it, and just play the 4/2/6 body. Other options are using the... Well, he can't use the gold pile because of the weaker taxes, which I really do not miss having to play around back in Open. Really not a big fan of these events, especially because not really a lot of indication either. So I think he should just play the Naga Tide Master. Obviously, a lot of good targets to kill off with an outmaneuver eventually, but just having the bigger body, though I can definitely see merit to this line as well, because there's not really any lane he can drop creatures in. Though I think I personally would prefer, just get a big body out so we can guarantee a kill with an outmaneuver. But as we can see, the Zorn player sees, wow, suddenly this board has just been cleared. Like, there's no way for him to progress against the Shark Protector. Any lane he moves, he's going to die. And so he's surrendered. And Sharks does take down the tournament. So in 2 games where Kenich seemed, he was on the back foot, or he wasn't really making any progress, out of nowhere, just by playing solid creatures, solid placement of creatures, not trying to do anything fancy, he's not trying to race, just waiting for the right spots. He was able to outlast his opponent. Now, granted, he did have a nice hand versing a rush deck, and I can definitely see a Kenich deck like that getting punished when they draw some of those bigger honor guys. But he had the nice hand, and also Zorn, very predictable champion. There's not going to be any other build for Zorn than just a straight aggro deck. So when you're making that mulligan decision, this hand can beat aggro. This hand will just instantly die to them. So that does help. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's no big tournament today, but the idea is that Blue Byte is caring about the community. They're caring about players wanting to participate in tournaments. And I really do recommend you guys keep your eyes out on the forum. Maybe we post it to Reddit even. Try and play in these tournaments, and I believe they will get bigger than just the 8-man Swiss. And hopefully that's what we can have in the future. Just another thing I wanted to talk about. I'm probably going to be releasing some kind of blog or discussion video. Basically, in regards to the community being a little bit negative about the game, which I definitely understand. And I also want to talk about a bit about Kalazar. So you may see that video before this one's released or afterwards. Obviously not trying to say anyone's wrong in their criticisms or anything like that. Mainly just people need a bit of a different mindset. And also playing a bit of discussion of, is Kalazar really OP, and why he kind of is in that regard. So guys, thanks for watching. If you have any comments, please leave them below. Any feedback, greatly appreciated. And really guys, I'm just making these videos for my own personal enjoyment, and hopefully for you guys as well. So if there's anything you guys want to see, I'm happy to make videos. If you want to see more draft, I can do more drafts. If you want to see more replay analysis, more tournaments, more deck techs, you guys just say what you want to see, and then I'll try and do something for that. So guys, thanks again for watching. I'm UnoPro signing out.